Okay, I believe that we are live. Okay, we are recording now. So thanks again for being here. So my name is Joel Bruce. I'm a co-chair of the Montgomery County Jail Coalition. I wanted to give a few minutes of background, both for our guests and for everybody who's here, to sort of know what we're doing here, right? So the Montgomery County Jail is located in Southwest Ohio, in the city of Dayton, and going back, let's say, 10 years or so, has been plagued with a series of lawsuits and claims and allegations that have included. Um, wrongdoing, discrimination, violence, and death, and overcrowding primarily. And so, thanks. And overcrowding primarily. And so when we started this work in about late 2019, the jail was housing about 750 to 800 people a day when it was built initially for 440. And the county set about a plan to deal with this problem, right? A problem again that had been noted on a daily basis, but also had flared up at times when there had been, quite catastrophic results for people inside, right? Harm and death and things that were preventable. And so the Jail Coalition was founded at that time to try to weigh in from the community's perspective on what to do with the future of this jail. It's a major piece of local infrastructure. It's costly. It has spiraling effects on people who live here. And so, how do we sort of weigh in from the community's perspective to advocate for alternatives to incarceration and to advocate for the most humane treatment possible for people who are inside? And so, there's a longer story that I would be glad to share over coffee or a drink sometime, but we've been at this for 6 years. In 2023, we both experienced a spike in deaths. We had 7 deaths in the jail that year. And by the end of that year, a committee had began to share out the results of a year of work and the plan to renovate the existing facility. So we are now in the process now of doing construction on the existing facility, and for our friends in other counties, the jail was originally built in the 60s, and then added on. The addition was added on 30 years ago in the early 90s, right? So it's an old building, and so this was an attempt both to deal with the harm, to deal with a changing incarcerated population, and to sort of modernize the facility in general. And so the facility that's being renovated now, the plans are for a jail that has, I think around 650 beds. I'm a bit off on that, but we are increasing the number of medical beds from 12 to 112. So that's about, 15 to 20% of the population will be in a unit dedicated to medical and mental health care. And so a year and change, there was a young man named Christian Black who was killed in the jail, quite not only tragically, but well, it shook everybody. It was captured on video. There were 10 COs around. The coroner ruled it a homicide. Um, and fast forward, the Jail Coalition became very active on that. But one thing that came out of that death was a call from the community around civilian oversight. And so in 2025, we did a campaign drive. We touched thousands of people really across the state to communicate to our elected officials that the status quo was no longer, was not sustainable. And we're concerned that even a new facility or renovated facility won't change the kind of cultural things that we think are generating the violence and harm inside. And so this call for civilian oversight was an attempt to inject transparency and accountability to the jail process. And again, through an organizing process last summer, we touched lots of people. We submitted the proposal, and no action was taken for multiple reasons. The sheriff and the county administrator suggested that the existing oversight was adequate, and the county commissioner said they didn't have the authority to create one. One, the sheriff can do that voluntarily, should he choose to, or two, it can be implemented by law by the state of Ohio. And so we pivoted with the spirit of that civilian oversight idea, pivoted to this dashboard that carries the spirit forward of injecting the jail operations with more transparency, holding elected officials and stakeholders accountable for reasons I'll explain in a minute, and also rebuilding public trust, because that we think was also underneath that call for civilian oversight, that a level of trust had been broken over the course of years, if not a decade, of this history of overcrowding and abuse and neglect and death and harm and a whole range of things and settlements, right? Very costly financial settlements. And so we've been devising this idea for a jail dashboard for a few months. We first submitted sort of an early proposal in April. We published an op-ed. We've given public comment at county commission meetings, and we have been invited to present our proposal formally to a working session of county commission next Tuesday. And so what we wanted to do here with this and with our guests today was bring more knowledge and experience into the room so we can learn, right? Both us as a coalition, but also in partnership with the county officials to learn how to best implement this idea locally. And so that's why, we invited you all here, and I just want to give just extend some gratitude to the folks that helped make this possible. First of all, we've been renovating our website. It's in the chat. I want to thank Jackie, Alice, Roberta for helping assemble our guests. So thank you for doing that legwork. I want to thank Becky Cochran, who's a coalition member as well, who did a lot of the initial research to gather examples from across the country of other things to learn from. And we just think, and I'll sort of pause, I'll stop here. We just think that, the renovation of the jail has cost already upwards of $40 million, and it will cost more, of course. And we just think it's a really pivotal moment to build out the data infrastructure to to make sure that the investment in the jail
How's
that
it
we're
going? How's it
making
going today? Good. Yeah.
will make sure that the investment
There.
in the jail, sorry, muting, is a protected investment, that it does what we want it to do and what we've been told it is supposed to do, which is reduce harm over the medium and long term, right? And we do that with data. We can do that with data. And so we hope that a dashboard is an example of, how to build out the proper data infrastructure to mirror the investment we're making in the physical facility. And the last thing I'll say is that the other part of our proposal is a series of quarterly town halls that the sheriff can attend with the public to share out what we're learning, to share out what he sees as the progress or the setbacks toward the goals that he and the other officials have laid out, namely to designing and renovating a facility to make it more humane and to be a source of less harm moving forward. So with that context, that was all my introduction. I really want to thank our guests. I want to thank the coalition. I want to thank all of you here for spending an hour today to learn about this. So the format here is we're going to give each of our counties 10 to 12 minutes. I might squeeze Harris County, who is by far the largest county here, into a smaller amount of time, but I hope that's enough time to give some background on the dashboard itself, how it came to be, what information does it capture, how are decisions about information made, because we expect that this is going to be a sticky one. So is it sort of just demographic data? Or are you also sharing critical incidents and uses of force and hospitalizations and other things that give a bit more insider information into how the facility is functioning? So, how are decisions made about information? How much does it cost the dashboard itself to run? And how would you characterize the impact that the dashboard has had so far if you have that data? Um, if you have any sense of has it changed any of the functioning of the jail? Do you have any information about that? Has it established any trust? What is your relationship with the community around the dashboard if one exists? Um, and yeah, I'll stop there. I think that that's plenty. And so I think we'll go in the following order. We will go with Stephanie, then Jerry, and then Dr. Roy and Ms. Smith from Harris County. And after that, I might do as a moderator one more question, and then we'll open it up. We'll see if we finish in an hour. If we have to push to 5 or 10 minutes after, and anybody can stay, that would be great. Anyway, long introduction. Thanks for being here. Stephanie, do you want to kick us off? And I'm gonna try to keep us to time just for the sake of things, so you'll mind my interruption at some point. But appreciate you being here.
Great. Thank you, Joel. Yes, I am really excited to be here and to share information. I'm from Hennepin County, Minnesota. Minneapolis is the largest city in Hennepin County. Hennepin County in Minnesota is the largest county in the state. So we are in Minnesota, the largest facility. The Hennepin County Jail is the largest facility in the state of Minnesota. I don't know the sizes, from the other partners that are on the call today, but little bit of background for that, for what I'm representing today. I have been with the Sheriff's Office since 2016, so this year will be 10 years for me with the Sheriff's Office. Our current Sheriff is Sheriff Dewana Witt, and she is just finishing her first term as sheriff. There are elections coming up again this year, 2027 as well, and she is running again for sheriff. So it's possible that her time will be extended. And the dashboard that we have did come about in the public sense, or the public face for it did come about under Sheriff Witt's leadership. And that I think went live, and I want to say in 2023, 2024. The dashboard that Hennepin County has is actually based off of an internal document that we have. And that started, there were a couple captains that I work with in the jail in our administration area, a couple captains that wanted just an easy way to get a high level report each morning, just high level summary of what's the jail population count, breakdowns. The internal document does include housing information. Online on our public dashboard, we don't include detailed housing information, and that's for a safety reason, because we don't want public information, about individuals or number of individuals in certain housing areas. But internally, that does include housing information, and I can share examples of those if that's helpful, either on screen or I can put clips in the chat. But anyway, so the framework for our online dashboard came about based off of the internal document. And that is kind of the format that we are using for external. So again, it is largely high-level summary information. It does include some high-level demographics. So for gender as well as race information, ethnicity, it does include just an overall breakout for that. We do have some minimum housing information. Again, some minimal housing information. We sometimes have to annex individuals to different locations, either for construction projects or for other reasons. And so we do include a breakout of how many individuals are in custody at our main facility, as well as those that are annexed at other locations. We don't provide the location of where those locations are, again, for safety reasons. So we do have some high level housing information. We also include, Joel, you mentioned in terms of, what your housing numbers are. We also include just some high level stats on, what is the jail population? What are we licensed to hold? And where are we at, like for today on any given day? What is our number today? We are a facility. We are licensed for 839 beds. And we have been in a stage this last year where we are running high as well. But that is out there so the public can see, what is the current population? What are our licensed beds? What's our percentage based off of that? It's nice when we're running below in terms of not completely full at the facility. The public can also see, okay, there is, space at our facility additionally, but that, obviously the high number counts impacts staffing levels, impacts staffing. And Joel, I see you recognize that. So for the public to be aware, again, in terms of the staffing needs for the facility. So we do include, what those numbers are, the numbers that we're targeting that we would like to have in the facility. And that's available then again for the public, but also for our commissioners. It's public, so anybody can access that. It's available 24/7, and we update. The data is refreshed every 3 hours throughout the day. So within a 3-hour timeline, the data is never more than 24 hours old. The individuals can get an update on the jail population. And so that has been very, very helpful. And I mentioned that the dashboard actually started, based off of an internal document. So I would say some of our partnerships have developed into expanding into the public aspect from developing some of those internal partnerships. Our area is called here at Hennepin County, it's Law, Safety, Justice. So that includes our partners, obviously, with the county attorney's office, with the court system, as well as our medical providers, public defenders, other in the law area. So in terms of building those kinds of relationships, I want to say the partnership started probably with that internal document that started to really be just an internal operations piece. But as individuals in different departments learned about the document, the increased requests for wanting a copy of that each day have continued to increase. And so I want to say right now, it probably internally goes to about 50 to 75 different partners within the Hennepin County. Again, it was designed really to be for our captains, lieutenants, and sergeants in the jail facility as an operational document. But being able to build off of that and use it in the public sense for providing, again, that transparency. And transparency with Sheriff Witt, I mentioned with her first campaign, transparency was one of the main pillars of her campaign when she was first running for sheriff's office. And so being able to build on that and provide the dashboard as a transparency piece has been a large accomplishment, something that she was really committed to, and is happy to have that information available for folks. One other piece, I'd keep me to time, Joel, as you need to, or questions if I forget. One other piece you mentioned was cost. And I will say internally, there was very little cost in terms of needing to purchase, products, that type of thing. A lot of it is the technology. Now we had a good part of the technology in place because of our IT system with Hennepin County and the application that we use. I won't go into the technical aspects, but I'm happy to answer questions if those come up. We had a lot of those technology pieces, the application available, and our IT team had a lot of those protocols set in place. So if we would have had to develop that, a lot of it would have been staff time. I don't have a number off the top of my head for how long did that take. I know when we moved to the public platform, I worked with our information officer on that. I'd have to go back and think in total hours, maybe because we had a lot of the base work in place already. I want to say probably if I had to hour it out, it would have been probably a solid 40 hours, maybe between the two of us. So it was staff time. And not to minimize the cost on that, but that's just to say that we didn't have to invest in other technologies. That might be a consideration for other areas if that's not something that's been developed internally. But because we had that in place, the cost really was staff time in terms of developing that and putting the information out there. You didn't ask about this, Joel, but one thing I will also mention is just in terms of community input. Before we went live with the public version of the dashboard, Sheriff Witt did also consult with she has a community advisory board. And I don't know the numbers. I want to say there's probably about 10 to 15 members on that. I could be misspeaking, so please don't quote me on that number. But she did consult with the community advisory board and did present, this is what the dashboard is going to look like. This is the information it's going to contain, the information it's going to have. So she did get feedback from the community advisory board on that initially, as well as their approval. And again, a very, very important piece, as you mentioned, in terms of community information on there. So I think I will stop there. I'm just about to time, or if there's any questions I forgot to answer, please.
Well, so yeah, I'm curious. Thank you, Stephanie. And maybe just one more question before we pass it off. I mean, how would you characterize the impact that the dashboard has had either on jail functioning or, in any way that you might measure the impact of it?
Again, I'll kind of turn to our internal partners. A large piece of how the dashboard has impacted it is again with those internal partnerships. And there is an ongoing jail review team that looks at the jail population. And I want to say that the dashboard piece has been kind of the main launch point of conversations because we use that to track. It does breaks down the overall population by charge level within the facility. And so that does show, and I'll send maybe a clip in the chat. It does show that, every day, the largest percentage, it's 80% of our population are felony-based charges for people in custody. So the other 20% is broken down, between a misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, probable cause. So just as an indication of, what is the breakdown of the population in the jail. And so for working with those partners, that has been a really incredible piece again. And for our county commissioners, another part that comes into that is the funding aspect, because of course the jail is funded through the county pieces, and the commissioners are the ones that work on the budget and monitor the budget. So in terms of being able to talk about jail population and the activities in the jail and being able to put that into again, kind of a picture or a visual so that county commissioners can see that. And it's day to day. So there's nothing, we don't control the population from day to day. It is exactly, what the numbers show. And so that just in terms of building trust across those partners. And that translates again then to the public aspect. We did have in the last year with numbers in the jail, we did have a conditional order where we were limited to the number of people that we could have in custody at the jail at a certain time. And our local media used those dashboard numbers frequently just to be able to go and see what the numbers were at the jail. They knew what the limit was. They knew, what we were required to work with. And so that information, again, was there for the general public, including commissioners, including other Hennepin County partners, the media, the public, so that kind of sent the message that, this is what our information is. We're not trying to hide anything. These are the numbers that we have. This is the breakdown of the population, again, with some of those demographic pieces. So in terms of building that kind of trust, so when we come back and are asking for additional support, possibly, or additional funds, that information is there. We don't have a lot of historical information. I should say we don't have any historical information. That is something we have talked about adding to that. We might do that in the future, but as our first phase of the dashboard, we wanted to just get the initial high level day-to-day operation piece out for individuals to see. So we may add to that in the future, but at the moment, we don't have the historical. We have that internally, of course, but yeah. So long answer to your question, Joel. I hope I
That's
answered
great.
that.
You did. You did. Thank you, Stephanie. I really appreciate it. We're going to pass the baton now to Jerry Evans from Polk County, Iowa. Jerry,
Hey,
thanks for being
thank you. So just to kind of give some background, in 2007, Polk County was faced with a similar situation. The old jail that was in downtown Des Moines had reached capacity, and a bond issue was introduced and passed to build a new jail, kind of a little bit on the outskirts of Des Moines proper, per se. And at that time, the group that was advocating for the new jail formed what is called the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. So the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, we meet every other month, and it's made up of two Board of Supervisor members, chief judge, county attorney, public defender, the police chief, the Polk County sheriff, an area police chief from one of the suburbs. We have the director of mental health. We have a person with lived experience, and we have somebody from the school district now on our representing the school district on our Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. And the purpose of creating that council was the thought at the time was we've just built a new jail, and if we don't do some things to make sure that we can get people diverted from going into jail, we're going to have a similar situation in a few years where our jail will be back up to the maximum capacity. And thankfully, they thought that that day was going to, the prognosticators or whatever that came in and did the study, thought that the jail would reach maximum population somewhere around 2015. And our population has not increased in our jail since 2013. So, and that's through a lot of proactive efforts. We have a pretrial release program that's operated by the Iowa Department of Corrections at our jail that interviews inmates every morning and makes recommendations at their initial appearance about releasing them to pretrial release. We have a mental health caseworker that's embedded in the jail that recognizes those individuals who are, the derogatory term is kind of the frequent flyers, so to speak. These are individuals that have mental health issues that is leading them to get arrested for low-level offenses. Once that person gets arrested, the mental health case social worker automatically makes contact with them, makes contact with their caseworker, tries to get them established back into the community. We recently introduced a reentry kiosk where as someone who leaves the jail can get signed up with services at the kiosk. And just this month, we also began providing Uber rides to anybody leaving the jail needing a ride to their destination. And we also will offer rides for them to, after they've been released, up to 60 days for treatment or medical services. They just have to reach out to the reentry coordinator. So that's kind of the history of our jail. And our dashboard came about because at every meeting, the jail administrator would come up in front of our CJCC meetings and give us an update on population. And to the earlier point, there was data available, but it was oftentimes on Excel spreadsheets, and then they'd put it into a Word format and whatnot. So I got hired 3 years ago as the CJCC coordinator, the first time full-time position they've ever had. And by background, I was on the CJCC because I'm the former director of the Department of Corrections here in Polk County. So I was on the CJCC for 7 years prior to taking this position. So I understood the CJCC and what the needs are. So we applied for a grant through the JAG Burn program to build a jail dashboard. We were awarded $19,000 for the jail dashboard, and we worked with a private company called Data Lakehouse. And so the process started with getting data use agreements. And I know internally you built your dashboard. We, because we used an outside vendor, that data use agreement process took us about 3 months to get everything finalized because it had to get finalized by the Board of Supervisors. It had to be signed off on by the CJCC, and it had to be signed off on by the private company, Data Lakehouse. Then the process began of collecting the data and deciding what data do we want to reflect in our dashboard. And I want to be clear here, we were very intentional in collecting static data. None of the data that we pulled over for our dashboard is designed for research purposes or doing any complicated algorithms. It's just to show who is in our jail. And if you can maybe pull up our dashboard there, Joel, I'll kind of go through some of the different features on it. I think I'll just cut to the chase on one of the questions that was asked about, what's been the response. My personal experience is that if you can share data more often than not, and this was the case with our jail dashboard, it actually does a great job of highlighting the good work everybody is doing in the jail. So as you can look at this, our dashboard is updated monthly. What we're really trying to do is follow trends. We don't get involved in anything internally in the jail, but as you look at this dashboard, if you want to just pause it there for a minute, some of the key things that I think came out of this dashboard is it gives the public a really good snapshot of who is being booked into the jail. And as you see, the most common offenses that people are getting booked into the jail are primarily misdemeanor offenses. They're class. So felony class A would be murder, kidnapping. Felony B would be things like burglary, larceny, things like that. And that goes into the definitions page. We have a tab at the top that helps the user understand what this data is trying to reflect. And that took a minute for us to make sure that we got everything included in, thank you, in that dashboard of defining it so that when people look at this, they got a good understanding. And I think the other thing that came out of this was really important was the length of stay. How long are people who are being booked into the jail, how long are they staying? And as you look at this, you'll see that, again, the workload at the jail, it really speaks to the workload at the jail. So we have approximately, our current population is 1,023. Last month, we booked in 1,506. 1,537 got released, so we went down in our overall population slightly. But 811 of those 1,500, so over 50% of the jail population is turning over every day. Again, those lower level misdemeanors. And in Iowa, you have the opportunity to get out from custody either through an initial appearance where you meet with the judge and you're given pretrial release with services, or you post a bond, a financial bond, and you can, on certain low level charges, you can post that financial bond prior to your initial appearance. Or if you wait to your initial appearance, the judge can also order a financial bond. Or for the low level misdemeanor cases such as public intox, trespassing, you can plead guilty at your initial appearance and the judge will release you and give you the monetary fine. So I think what it highlights for the citizens and those of us on the council is Des Moines is a very safe community. If you look at the charges of the people being booked into the jail, they're mainly for lower level and also higher level misdemeanor cases. The bulk of the cases that are getting booked in the jail are not for the more serious offenses. So I think that's important. As you go slide on down, we also do a 12-month look back to see what the population, how the trend line's going. And typically what you see is the summer months generally end up with the population numbers going up. And as you kind of go through the winter, they come down. And then we looked at who's booking the inmates into the jail, what agency. So we list out all the police departments in Polk County. And you can see by looking at this chart that so Des Moines proper is the largest city within Polk County. It's our state capital. And by far, they book the most number of inmates into the jail. But it's important to recognize, and this came out of the dashboard too, that it's not because they're doing anything different than the other police departments in terms of their bookings. It really comes down to what they call accelerator events. All of the restaurants, all the shows, all the major basketball games, sporting events occur in the metro city. And over 70% of the people that they're arresting aren't Des Moines residents. They are people who are coming into the city for events and whatnot and get picked up for OWI, other stuff, you know. So even though it looks like they're over policing, they're really not over policing. It's just the fact that they're the metro city. And so some of the other municipalities that are listed there, they don't have those accelerator events. They don't have as many restaurants, bars. Um, Again, we have our AAA farm team for the Iowa Cubs here in Des Moines and whatnot. And then the other one that gets the most attention every month is we also created a chart for the most common booking charges by month. And I think it's really important to recognize, and we're trying to do it. We have a behavioral health subcommittee that we established through our CJCC, and alcohol in Des Moines, in Polk County, in Iowa, Wisconsin, I don't know, Minnesota, but the Midwest, uh, I don't know if it's because there's not a lot of other things going on, but tailgates, going out on the weekend, having beers with your friends and whatnot is a common thing. And so our alcohol related arrests lead the most common bookings. Every month, operating while under the influence is one of the top booked offenses. There's been a couple months where operating under the influence, second offense, has been in the top five. And you'll see on this chart too that violation of probation is always one of the top two. And this is counterintuitive, but the reality is that's a good thing. And the reason that it's a good thing is it's showing that the court at the sentencing stage is trying to give people the opportunity to get their lives corrected. And so if you don't ever put people on probation that are kind of on that cut level, then you could literally bring down the number of people violating probation because they'd all be in prison, right? So it's hard for them to get rearrested if they're in prison. But the court does a very good job of trying to give people the opportunity to correct themselves. And again, they're being supervised in the community on probation, and they're quick to make sure that, the court is made aware of anytime there's a new arrest or serious violation. And then we break it down by demographics, race, gender, ethnicity, and then we track the housed and unhoused. And it's interesting with the housed and unhoused, it's pretty static, even though we recognize that there is a shortage of um, shelters, if you will, in Polk County to help assist those that are unhoused. And in the last year, several of the area cities, including Des Moines, have passed legislation to kind of deal with homeless encampments that pop up in different places. And they're really trying to clean up downtown Des Moines. It's our capital city, and if you're having people that are lingering around downtown, we have a skywalk system in Des Moines that was kind of, became a little bit questionable, for lack of a better term, for safety. So they've really tried to clean it up, but our unhoused numbers are always around that 6 to 7% a number. But again, this is all static data. It was never designed to be, researched. The hardest part of building out this dashboard was getting correct information. As you can tell, if you're going to go by gender, you can break it down and you can break it into which agency, how does it feed into the number of by seriousness of charges. So all those connectors with the logic that was necessary to input that data into each one of those screens. We were very meticulous about running trials to make sure that, so we'd ask the jail, does that seem like that's the right number to you, the jail staff? And they're like, well, let us check because we also have some internal numbers. And we finally all got to a point where we felt comfortable that the data that we were presenting was accurate data. So that's kind of the background of it. The data use agreements, the trends was very important to us for us on the CJC to be able to see what's it look like for our population numbers. And we talk about this at every CJCC meeting.
Gary, thank you so much. I appreciate all your comments, and I think that you're sort of building nicely on the things that Stephanie has shared as well. So thank you. We'll turn the floor over to our colleagues from Harris County, Texas. Thanks for being here.
All right. Again, wonderful dashboards. Thank you for sharing those. And as we see, we get more ideas. This dashboard for Harris County Jail was or is a collaborative effort between the Sheriff's Office and Office of County Administrator. I am the director for the data and analytics team embedded in the county's administrative wing. We worked incredibly closely with the sheriff's office to develop this dashboard. Harris County had a dashboard for quite a few years. It's a very large system. We're clocking around and at some peak levels all the way up to 10,000 average daily population. So, it's a massive size, right? So we always needed a dashboard. The dashboard has been in existence. It's, if I'm thinking right, it's at least 10 years or so that we had a dashboard prior to this version. That was an incredible dashboard. However, as you know, jail systems evolve. We have newer jail management systems that came online. So the processes over time diverge, and there needs to, in order to make it more relevant, we went back and revamped the existing dashboard. And it relies heavily on the more current data. It's validated very closely. Just like Polk County, we worked with as a team to validate the data so that we present the most accurate version. The motivation was transparency. The second part of that motivation was to give one more layer to that transparency, is what's driving. So maybe some level of understanding what are some of the KPIs that are driving the jail population higher. Is it suddenly the courts, or something changed? Maybe we are bringing in different kinds of people, the charge categories changed. So again, so we divvied up the dashboard into a few parts. The first part, in fact, let me share the link, and you can pull it up. Also, we have the demographics, which the first page is basically a nightly census. We refresh this every night, and it brings in the nightly census showing the demographics, length of stay in custody, and more like gender. We bring in some dimensions like the veteran status, homeless population, unhoused population, age, and we also show some some holes. Again, this is a work in progress, and because a dashboard can show data but doesn't show the reason or doesn't give any further explanation. So I always consider dashboards are as a starting point, not an endpoint. So that's our first page, and then we have the charges, which is the second page, and we look at the top charge. So in Harris County, if somebody is booked for multiple charges, we take the top charge based on a certain internal algorithm, which is basically the more serious. And if there is a collision, then we have a way of addressing the tiebreakers. And so we come to the charges page. Also shows outsourced population. Most of these visuals are interactive in nature, so you click on one, it filters the others, like the standard dashboards these days. And then we have the third page, which is the trends page, and it has two aspects to it. One of them is this page is kind of like a long-term year over year, by fiscal year, what's going on. So we can see some seasonalities in the data that comes out, but at the same time, we can see if there is a concerted effort in bringing down daily average bookings, daily average releases. So that gives a kind of like the slightly step back look into how we're doing today compared to a year back. And then the other one, there's a 30-day tab. This gives us more of a reaction. Of course, this is more noisy data, but and exactly, anytime these short-term range trends start going in different directions, we get with the decision makers and the operational leadership can take a look at it and make decisions around it. And Ms. Smith is going to go over some of those things. But one visual that we actually put in over here is, you see, it says the top right hand side, it's a released length of stay. So if we sampled all everyone that was released for the last 30 days, and we try to find out how many people were released within these buckets, you can see that 50 some percent, 54, 50, that large percentage of people were released within 48 hours. And that's actually a key parameter. When we see policy changes or some other changes in the system, we can actually, that percentage can shift, and that gets divvied up into the first one and the second one, because again, the large population is misdemeanor. And so if we see a shift in in these two buckets, we've come to recognize that this is actually a very sensitive kind of a leading indicator of what's going to happen in the long run. Because if a large population even stays for just one more day, that adds to the overall number of jail bed days, right? So now we also have the next page is on the side is a pretrial. That looks just like pretrial population, because we have both kinds. And again, these are it actually brings in some court data and shows how many people are there that have the top charge pending by courts. So yes, if a specific court shows up, I think it kind of gives a baseline and maybe where attention needs to be drawn. So now again, these are I think the dashboard is almost always an oversimplification of things. It doesn't go into really answering the whys, but like Joel mentioned, that that it is it's a way that people feel a little bit more informed. It helps rather than hurts, providing transparency. I will touch on one other point uh, is characterization the impact of the dashboard had on jail operations. Ms. Smith is going to talk more about it, hopefully. Mm, the few things that we recognized is that the noise in a 30-day data and the stability in a long-term data. It's a way to help the county executives understand that just one day of high data, it's don't react. There are things that can be going on that so I think it informs the county executives and the decision makers in a way that they are not overly reacting. This is my perspective. And the secondly, they also now look at not just the jail population, not just the ADP, but also some of the time bands. And we report two different types of length of stay. One is in custody length of stay, which is the distribution you'll see is shifted towards the right, and then released length of stay, sampling the people that are going out. So each of them tied to a long-term or a short-term KPI. So I think that um, people are getting to a point where they understand the data a little bit more and knows which ones are more sensitive to look at. So um, that's at a very high level how we came about it. All of this is made possible again because of this amazing collaboration that we have with our sheriff's office and some really great subject matter experts. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Smith.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you, Dr. Roy, for your comments, and Ms. Smith in just one moment. And I see some questions populating in the chat. Thank you. Tom, I see your hand also. We're going to switch over to question and answer in 5 minutes or so. And if we need to push a little bit past 1 o'clock, if you can stay, then that would be great. Ms. Smith, please.
Joe, I missed some of the early part, but did they talk about why they're doing this?
Yeah,
Um,
there was some discussion earlier about sort of I think in Hennepin County, if I'm characterizing this correctly, it was very much the sheriff's initiative. And Jerry from Polk County suggested it was meant initially at least to solve some internal not problems, just make internal functioning and communication and information exchange easier. So there were things that sort of generated, but also a history of overcrowding and other things, if I'm
so
characterizing.
nothing to do with incidents in the jail or death or anything. It was more of just being able to collect the data for
Sounds that
whatever
way.
management purpose. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. Jessica, please.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So as AJ was saying, I am with the sheriff's office. I'm the system administrator over our jail management system. So I brought operational context to the data that they were publishing on the dashboard. The biggest takeaway that I got from everybody talking is it doesn't matter how big your jail is or where it is in the country, we're all facing the same issues with overpopulation and public scrutiny, death in custody, court backlogs, all the things. We all have the same environmental issues, and the public definitely wants visibility into that. AJ, I think, undersold the work that his team did. They took an existing dashboard and modernized it and really made it much more user-friendly and a better tool for the public and our justice partners. So some great work was done there. Having the court data on the dashboard, I think, has helped the public see that the jail is part of a larger justice ecosystem, and that we're not a standalone entity that has all these people and we don't have control over who we have or why we have them or how long we have them most of the time. We just house them and have care, custody, and control while they're in custody. So seeing that the courts play a big role, the arresting agencies that are bringing in and why they're bringing them in, all play a part in the population, not just the jail by itself. So I think that visibility has really helped understand what goes into the jail population more than just that number by itself. For run down the list of questions for the cost element, we were replacing the existing dashboard. So other than the staff cost on the county administrator side of developing the dashboard, I don't think there was any substantial resource cost because we replaced existing resources with newer modernized resources. And then policy and operation changes, absolutely within the sheriff's office. They watch those population numbers, see the trends to see if it's seasonal or something is spiking because of an event or some other factors that may be impacting our population. That average length of stay, we absolutely watch very, very closely to see. Thankfully, it's been trending down. We've been working very hard with the courts to get some of the backlog moving to get that number down, because that absolutely has an impact on the overall jail environment, how long people are here. As I know the question was in the chat, our dashboard does not contain any incident data or death in custody data, medical data, any of that. We do have internal dashboards for that information, but it's not published on our public dashboard.
Do either of your dashboards, so the population numbers that I provided with our dashboard are just the state inmates, so to speak. We also have a contract with the federal government to house federal inmates, so a lot of your immigration stuff. But as I understand it, in talking with, it would have taken literally an act of Congress in order for federal data to ever be publicly displayed. So we did not, and again, our local jurisdictions really have no involvement, so to speak, with our CJCC is local Polk County stakeholder. So we didn't do anything with the federal data on our dashboard.
So we're actually in kind of the opposite situation. We have way too many inmates. So not only can we not house for anybody else, but we have to outsource. We're currently outsourcing 1,200 inmates today. So we pay other counties and some private jails to house our prisoners. And those numbers are included, but segregated on our dashboard because the public is interested in the numbers that we're having to send out for sure, as a cost issue and as a friends and family connection issue.
From a lesson learned standpoint, I can jump in. And first of all, it has to be collaboration between technology and subject matter experts. Number two, the time it took to build this dashboard is very high because we had a very small population, and it was built on a newly developed data warehouse. So I would say the total amount of work that went into it is going to be enormous, and we run it every day, and we can even run it every 15 minutes. But if you are building something number one, it has to be a sustained effort that needs to be maintained for a longer period of time. It's not like just build it and publish and go home. No, it's a live thing that needs a lot more work because business processes changes, context changes, and we have to work on it. Of course, sponsorship from the entire county is a very important thing. Like you really need that partnership to make something like this happen. The other part is I think I already mentioned this, is that it evolves and it will continue to evolve, and it is only us look at the surface of what is going on. A dashboard can never replace a full-blown analytical work to understand what is going on. And so there is a real danger in looking at surface and judging the entire depth of the problem. And I briefly mentioned about that holes. If you click on the ice holes, it shows a length of stay. So people that are not familiar with the system will think that we are holding people for ice detention for very long periods of time, but that's not the case. They're often come in and they are there till their local charges are cleared. And as soon as, in fact, the local charges gets cleared, it's within 24 hours that people are released, to ICE. So, we struggle with making those some of those calculations to show what exactly trying to get to more of the bottom of things is incredibly difficult and takes time to publish valid results. So those are
Thank
some
you.
of the lessons learned.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And maybe before opening it up, Stephanie, did you want to have any comments? You sort of spoke first, and now you've been listening, and I wonder if you have anything else to add.
I don't know that I have anything new to add. I will second both what AJ, Jessica, and Jerry mentioned, in terms of, again, just in terms of the public interface. And AJ, I really appreciate what you were saying. Jessica, I think you noted this as well, that, this really gives just a kind of a high level snapshot of the activities in the jail or the things that are managed in the jail. And part of that is the hope of giving maybe just an inkling into, what the staff at the jail, the deputies, what they manage, as well as the medical partners. So it's a very, very complex situation and very, very complex organization. And so seeing just a few snapshots of that, I think being able to include like the mental health aspect. We've had that in the past. We don't currently have the mental health assessment information on there due to a database change that we did. We're still assessing that information to be sure that it's accurate. But that is a large, part, again, and for the public to be able to see, the number of folks that are in custody in the jail that are struggling with mental health issues. That is not the primary role of, of the jail, of the sheriff's office, is to manage mental health issues, but it is a huge need. And so for the public to be aware for that, for, commissioners and partners to be aware of that, to see how much of that is managed or other types of things in terms of addiction issues. Another part that also is not, we have that information internally. I saw a question, in there on the side. Some of that we do not include incidents or death information if that occurs publicly. That is tracked internally, and we do report that internally to different sources. But again, those are all pieces that are managed by the staff at the jail and through the partners at the jail. That, again, for the public, it's just a really brief snapshot of the kinds of things that folks handle from day to day. And to try to put, kind of eyesight into that, I'll just second kind of the comments previously made with the other speakers on that.
Thank you, Stephanie. I see a couple hands, and if our guests are able to stay until 10 after, I see Jerry and then Ben. If you want to each speak in time or in turn, and maybe I'll throw one more log on the fire, and then we'll go back around to our panelists. Jerry, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't know I had my hand up. No, I was just trying to share some stuff in the chat. The way that we designed our
I'm sorry,
dashboard.
Jerry Evans. That's my fault. Jerry, there's another Jerry who's been
Okay,
waiting. I apologize for the confusion. I see that. Jerry Hartman,
all
please.
good.
Thank you. Sorry about that. You are unmuted, Jerry Hartman, but we cannot hear you. Do you want to try to put something in the chat instead? Okay, thank you. And Jerry previously had a question about what the interface looks like
Can you hear
internally.
me?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I had to change the audio, but I've got like three
Go for it.
microphones. I'm sorry. I had put something in the chat earlier, but what I was asking is, it was right after basically when it's populated nightly. Is that coming from other sources and they're like culling it from other sources and putting it into the dashboard, or is this like part of the same interface? Do they come into this dashboard and they populate that information?
Thanks, Jerry. So there's a question, and we'll just I'll hear from Ben in a moment, and then pass it back around. But maybe the one dimension of that question is sort of what are the back end partnerships or units that sort of allow that collect data, because it's probably not only in the sheriff's office or not only here, and how the data runs together. Maybe something like that, Jerry Hartman, if that makes sense. Ben, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I kind of, I hear you talking about court data, which, helps the family understand who's in jail and where they're at and whatever. And you got demographic data, which helps understand some cause and effect and other issues that might be within the community, and housing data, which understands population and maybe reentry issues. But my question is, we're not putting injuries down there. We're not putting incidents down there, but they are public because every single person that dies in jail, everyone ends up knowing about it. In our particular county, there's been over $20 million in lawsuits. It's just absolutely ridiculous that were, put down as, an suicide or an accidental injury that turns up to be murder. And so my question for you is, how can we take this data? How can we use this data in a way that helps with accountability and maybe in training so we can understand? Because if you went to a restaurant that is constantly having a problem with the sandwich they're making, well, you'd stop eating that sandwich. And all the data is showing is that the population just keeps rising. So either our country's completely failing or something we're doing isn't working. And how do we use that data for training, for understanding? And like with the injuries and the deaths, everybody already knows it because it ends up being a riot on Main Street. So why don't we put that data in there to let people know, maybe in our control, that they don't, it doesn't happen the night it happened, but eventually we put in there so we can take that data and use it for training and understanding how do we make these jails functional in our community. And anyone
Thank
can
you.
answer it. I want to thank everyone for being here. The information you guys are giving us is vital. We're in a critical situation in this country. You know that. We need this information. So thank you guys so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. And so I might just prompt this, both connecting some threads and then turn it back over. We'll do one more round robin before we close out. But so Jerry had the questions about sort of how some of the back end data works and how the partnerships and how things flow together. But the other side, and Ben put it very, very straightforward, is like we have a very specific agenda here, right? Which is to make sure people don't die and are not harmed in the jail. And we realize that all kinds of things, right? Like again, looking in the chat, like staffing ratios, whether that's COs or whether that's we have a third party, we have NAFCare as a third party vendor that does our healthcare, right? What are their staffing ratios like? If someone's punching a clock, can we pull from that data too, so we can see all the time, if they're where their contract says they need to be or if they're not showing up, right? And so there is a critical agenda here to both protect the investment, as I said at the outset, but more specifically to make sure that people's experiences inside are as humane as possible. And so, that the last question, I guess, is around like how can we use, or how do you use, or we use the data to make the facility more humane and make its leadership more accountable. I don't know if we want to go back, maybe we can go
And
backwards.
Joe,
Harris County.
I would
Tom,
be
you got one
interested
more? Sure.
also in knowing in this final round robin, who their mental health, who their nap care, who their provider is.
Sure.
Because we've heard nap care is the best in the country and they're lousy. So I wonder if who they're using. I'm sorry for that, but I'd
That's
be
okay.
interested to
Thanks,
know
Tom.
that as well.
Yeah, if you have that, if you know how your county provides mental and medical health care, whether it's a vendor or if it's in-house staff, that would be of note too. So maybe we'll just go backwards. We're gonna do Harris County, Polk, and then Hennepin. How about that?
I'll jump
Okay,
in. Joel, I didn't hear the order number. So did
Go
you want
ahead.
me to go
You
first
got the
or?
floor. No, it doesn't matter. It's fine. Go ahead,
Okay.
Stephanie. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of accountability, I appreciate that question, and I absolutely understand, the importance of that. I will just mention some hurdles. It's not an excuse for why we can't do that, but some hurdles. I know, like for medical information, we partner with our local medical partners, but it's not our database. So it's not the sheriff's office data. So we don't necessarily have the right to be able to report that. That would also fall into whether, it's a public or personal data kind of issue. And definitely when we get into the medical pieces, um, if there are parts of that, that's, a part of the hurdle. Obviously, we do track incident data among, things that happen. We do have that internally. Some of that is not, again, we come into the public hurdle aspect. Is it public data? If we're identifying individuals in custody, or if we're identifying, individual staff people, that information may not be public to release, or, some of that might include details that are not for public, or if it's under investigation, there are, internal affairs departments. If it's under investigation, that would be another hurdle in terms of, can we talk about this yet? Can we report anything on that? But I think the question is for high level summary data. How could we report that as a way to be accountable? And that is a very good question. That's actually something I would like to think a little bit further about. It would involve, connecting with partners internally, and obviously being sure that we can share that at a high level. But I think it's an excellent question and gets to, information that the public probably is also very curious about. And I appreciate, like you said, we are in this country at the moment, we're in a difficult situation. So for being able to provide a little more of that, again, for that whole transparency piece. And I know that within each agency, I can speak for Hennepin County. I'm assuming for the others, absolutely, in terms of safety internally for individuals in the care of the facility, as well as for the staff people, safety is a high priority and a high, interest. So that is difficult all the way around if incidents happen. So that is definitely something that, a lot of effort, a lot of resource goes to being sure that everybody is as safe as possible. That doesn't answer the question of how do we get that information on the dashboard, but those are a couple hurdles that I'm aware of, at least from Hennepin County. I'll
Thank
pass
you,
to
Stephanie.
the next person. Yeah.
Yeah, Jerry Evans.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, I'm glad the question got brought up about how the data comes through. So the data from the jail goes through the Polk County server. It's stored in the Polk County server, then it's autonomized, and then that gets sent up to Data Lakehouse, who does all the analytics that build out the dashboard. So all Data Lakehouse ever receives is raw numbers. All of the inmate information has been specifically autonomized. There's no way to track, who the person is. If you had one Class A felony that month, for example, you would have no way of knowing who that person is. Although they do have a booking page on the jail that lists everybody that gets booked in daily. And we went to the monthly. Again, we were just trying to track the trends. We weren't really necessarily in the fluctuations day to day. We were just trying to look at the trends. And I will build off of what I believe, and don't quote me, but I believe we also have NavCare. And the issues you run into with NavCare is all related to HIPAA. We do a mental health screen at the jail. I think they also do a drug screen. None of that information is ever readily available to us to put inside of any type of dashboard. Again, the HIPAA restrictions prevent us from even getting that information. And as it relates to critical incidences, I'm not trying to make our situation be grandiose or anything, but we've not had knock on wood, we haven't had a death in our jail. I can't remember how long it's been. And I've toured the jail several times, and I've always been thoroughly impressed. It's like a Fortune 500 company under a building out there with the jail, with dentistry, healthcare, all the different pods, all the different food services, and everything else that run through that operation. And our sheriff every year gets the chance to come before the Board of Supervisors at budget time, and he gets questioned and talks about staffing ratios and all that. And I haven't heard that as being an issue from the sheriff at any point. So I think some of those problems are not our problems necessarily in Polk County. So I can't speak to and the critical incident stuff. Again, that's under the sheriff's purview. We're not really, our dashboard was designed to give the public a snapshot of who's in our dashboard. And just so you know, we're building out a second dashboard with our county attorney's office to show how those cases then, how long did it take for a case to get resolved, so we can continue the continuum through the Polk County justice system. and that project is almost completed as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Jerry. AJ and Jessica.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and add on to that. I absolutely agree with everything both you guys said. The purpose of our dashboard is to share population and demographic information. The jail incidents and death in custody information absolutely is important. And yes, I know that becomes public eventually, but as AJ mentioned, it's a snapshot of data, a very small piece of a much larger iceberg. But just with ice holes, you can see how much confusion could go into how that's interpreted. If you start putting death in custody or jail incidents in just a tiny piece of information, that absolutely could spur more questions than answers with just a snapshot of a little bit of data. You would need full incident details, and then that gets into identifying information and could be lawsuits, could be investigations, all the things that go into that. So there are definitely a lot of gray areas and nuances that go into that type of data. Yes, it can be gotten through public information or other areas, but publishing it as a general rule, I think, would cause more confusion. So, but every county could make their own decisions, absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So we are at 1:15 and y'all have stayed for 75 minutes. And so there's some other notes in the chat, and this was an ongoing conversation that we are having locally. And we just appreciate the wisdom, the experience, all the knowledge that you have from where you sit to share with us. So really thank you. We will be sharing this video with our county commissioners and with folks in the sheriff's office and others. Yeah, we're really grateful. So thank you all for being here, our guests in particular, and for the rest of our audience. You'll hear from us before too long. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.